Welcome to the Wyoming Women's Business Center webinar series. Today's presentation is called Crafting Your Story, Social Media Marketing and Your Brand and Your Business Brand. I am Jonathan Howdeshell, one of the business counselors at the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and I will be your moderator today. Our speaker today is Jessica Romero. She is a former small business owner turned community advocate and marketer. She now works with small businesses in developing their brand image via stylish and strategic social media, websites, production, and print marketing. Her passion is for small business and thriving communities, has fueled projects with Laramie Main Street Alliance, Small Business Saturday, The Local Crowd, Wyoming Women's Business Council, and more. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center. Make sure you check out our other videos and make sure you subscribe. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat area and I will ask them for you. Now, without further ado, I present to you Jessica Romero.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to your team for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and to talk about social media marketing and small business branding. My name is Jessica Romero, as you said, and I own Identity Branding Company here in Laramie. Some people may know me as the former owner of Sweets, Cakes, and Pastry in downtown Laramie, or for my work with Laramie Main Street in downtown Laramie. Or if we're just meeting, I'm glad to meet anybody. My background is pretty diverse. I have training in culinary arts as well as communication and journalism, anthropology, and then somewhere along the line I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug and found a love for small business. So welcome to Crafting Your Story, Social Media Marketing and Your Business Brand. First I'm going to talk about what's ahead. So first we'll talk about what is a brand and why does it matter. Do you have one? Should you have one? That kind of thing. Next, building personality with your brand and cultivating a relationship with your customers. Next, I'll talk about tools for keeping consistent across your social media and design. And then lastly, staying present across your social media. So before we start, I just want to make it clear that I am barely going to cover the tip of the iceberg when it comes to social media marketing and small business branding. I could absolutely never tell you everything that there is to know about social media marketing. At any given time, there's hundreds of accounts you could have, there's millions of things you could be doing, and it's always changing. My focus is not on where you should have your profile, how you should be using them, what you should be posting specifically, but rather why you need to be using these tools to support your business and your business brand. I think it's very important to spend time focused on this. Your success ultimately depends on your ability to experiment and explore. That's something that I think people are often very afraid of. A lot of people tell me, well, you know, social media is scary. I don't want to put myself out there like that. But that's how you learn and that's how you grow. So you have to always be willing to experiment and explore and understand that sometimes you're going to do things that work and sometimes you will do things that don't work, and you take it as a lesson and move forward. So that said, even though I cannot teach you everything there is to know, if you ever have any questions, here's my contact information. Don't hesitate to get in touch. I would love to chat and figure out how I could help you. And I can show this again at the end of this, so you can write that down. So first, what is a brand and what is it doing for me? So your brand isn't just the sign on your door or your Facebook profile or your business card or your poster, the ad in the newspaper, the commercial on the TV. Your brand is your identity. It's your name, your image, your personality, your products or your services, and the experience you're providing to your customers. So a good brand is going to speak clearly to your customers. They're going to know exactly what you're doing for them, what you're offering them, what you can do to help them out. It's going to confirm your credibility. When people look at your social media profile or your website or anything that is related to you, they're going to know this person knows what they're talking about. They're confident in what they're saying. They understand my needs and they're going to take care of me. And lastly, it connects and builds a relationship. So a brand isn't just sticking your name out there with your product and a price tag. It's getting to know your customers, understanding them, helping them out, and growing along with them. So here on the right, I have Adidas, Nike, and Puma, all athletic brands, which most of us would recognize. I'm sure even if the text wasn't on any of these logos, that many of you would recognize these brands, and you have some interaction with them at some point and some opinion based on your personal experience with them. So that's, in a nutshell, what a brand is and what it's doing for businesses. So along with good branding comes bad branding, and bad branding can be from the start and ultimately lead to the failure of a business, or it could just be a mistake made along the way. So it can confuse customers, create unwanted attention, or hide your product from your audience. So here on the right, I have a couple pretty extreme examples for big name brands, but these are things that are just as likely to happen in a small business as they are a large business. So the first one is Panasonic, who in the 90s created a campaign with Woody the Woodpecker because of its appeal to Japanese customers. So they created a campaign with slogans and ads based around the Woody, touchscreen features, and the internet pecker. They were completely unaware of the unwanted publicity surrounding these slang terms, and that was ahead of them, and they had a nightmare on their hands, as you can expect. Had they explored this further and really looked into what this meant, what people might be thinking when they read these ads, I'd assume they probably would have picked a different mascot and gone a different direction, because this isn't the attention that they were seeking out, but they did end up with. Another example is Tropicana, the orange juice brand, which most of us are familiar with an image of an orange with a straw coming out of it. So years ago, they rebranded away from that image to this glass of orange juice. And I imagine, as anybody would be, they were excited about a fresh new look, and they released it in grocery stores and rolled it out, and immediately their sales plummeted by 20%. People didn't recognize it anymore. They didn't know it was Tropicana because the image was different. It kind of faded into the background of the juice aisle. And along with that, when the image changes, your customers may be wondering what else changed. Well, is the juice different? Is the Tropicana I love different? Is the Tropicana I used to drink different? They changed the image, so what's going on here? Maybe I don't like it anymore. So within 2 months, they immediately went back to their old logo because people were confused. They didn't know what was happening, and their product was also hidden. So my last example is the 2012 Olympics, which were held in London, and these geometric, bright, colorful images down on the bottom, that's the logo from then. And I assume that the designers who did this wanted something modern and avant-garde and unique to represent their city, but what ended up happening was it was so different than other Olympic logos that people didn't get it. They hated it. They thought it was ugly. They thought it didn't match the brand of the Olympics. Some people thought that it symbolized something, that maybe they were trying to hide a message in here, that something fishy was going on. And ultimately, what happened was they just changed too much, and people freaked out. So it created unwanted attention. There was more attention on this logo than there was on the actual Olympics. So those are just some examples of when it can go wrong. So now we can talk about kind of building your own brand for your business. And if you don't have a business, you also could have a brand for yourself, for your services, who you are, if you're a figure in the community, what you're doing. All of this applies for that as well. So your brand is made up of many things. First of all, your mission. So what are your goals? What are you trying to offer your customers? What do you want to provide them with? At the end of the day, what is your job? Next is your style. So depending on what you're selling, your style is going to be different. If you're selling women's clothing in a boutique, it's obviously going to be more feminine. If you're selling Harley Davidsons, it's obviously going to be more masculine. If maybe it's more bohemian or bohemian or more edgy or maybe geared towards children. It really depends on what you're selling and what your mission is and who your customer is. And along with this is your voice. So how are you talking to these people? If you're selling toys to children, you're going to speak differently than if you're selling those Harley-Davidsons to Harley-Davidson enthusiasts. And lastly is your values. So what sets you apart? What is valuable in your company, in your brand, in what you're offering? Maybe you're a restaurant that focuses on only using local ingredients. Maybe you use organic cotton in your designs. Maybe there's something about you that is valuable to you and is therefore valuable to the customer, and that is hugely important in your brand, just as much as the image that's on your business cards. So your brand is living and breathing. You can't just go out and buy a brand on the internet and stick it out places and make money. You have to nurture it, you have to feed it, you have to look after it, you have to grow with it. So there's two ways that I like to look at it. You can look at your brand, one as a person. So think of somebody in your life who you're very familiar with. Maybe it's a sibling or a spouse or a friend. You probably know what their overall mission is in life, what they really want to do, what really gets them going. You know what their style is, how they dress, what their house looks like, the kind of car they drive. You know how they speak. You know their weird quirks and what gets them excited. You know what their values are, what's important to them, the things that they would never do and the things that they would always do. So your brand is just like that. It's like that person. You know, if you're shopping and you see something on a rack and you say, that looks just like this person, that same thing can happen with a brand. And another way to look at it is like a designed room. So maybe a living room that you're designing and you're putting bits of furniture and artwork and textiles and rugs and curtains and all of that. You want all of that to go together. It all works together. You don't just slap one thing in a room and have a room. It's built of many pieces. And a parallel I draw all the time, especially when it comes to designed work, so like a poster or a graphic, is pillows on a couch. So you want everything to be consistent in style, which we will talk about here in a minute, but you want it to be so consistent that they look like they belong together. So think of all of your graphics like pillows on a couch. If you design this really cool business card, but you throw it on the couch with your posters and your logos and your website and it just clashes and looks ridiculous, then it's not serving your brand appropriately, no matter how cool it is. So we talked about what a brand is and if you have them and why you should have one. So now I'm going to talk about personality. So a unique brand personality pretty much does the work for you. It attracts your ideal customers. It creates repeat customers. It builds trust. It leads to referrals and support, and it can build a cult-like following. So I am a firm believer that you should focus on the customers that are appropriate to you. As a business owner, you can have the tendency to want to reach everybody, to offer something for everybody, but I don't think that that is necessary. If you know that your ideal customers are young moms who live in Wyoming, then focus on them. Don't worry about anybody else. Take care of them and they will take care of you. So your brand personality is going to help you attract these people and keep them. So you're creating your repeat customers. You're serving them well. They want to come back. They trust you for what you're telling them, for what you're doing. And then they're going to be referring their friends and supporting you. So maybe they don't buy something from you, but they're going to bring you up with their friends. They're going to post about you on Facebook or Instagram. They're going to tag you online. If they're selling something, they're going to use you and shout your business name out. And then building a cult-like following, I think we see that a lot with big brands. I think it happens on a little level as well, but what I'm talking about is kind of the huge brands. So I'm sure that each of you have a brand that you're fiercely loyal to for some reason or another, and you might not know exactly why you're loyal to them. I brought this up last week, and people brought up Canon for cameras and then North Face for coats and winter wear. And I talked about the fact that I'm fiercely loyal to Apple products, which I think many people are, mostly because of their brand because they've created this environment where I feel like they're definitely going to tell me what cool thing I need, whether that's right or not. So some examples I have up here are Target, Whole Foods, Toyota, Amazon, Dunkin' Donuts, or Starbucks, depending on your region, and Apple. So when it comes to building this personality that I'm talking about, social media is absolutely priceless. It's a free tool that allows you to reach your audience in the comfort of their own homes. So first of all, you're not paying for it. Second of all, you're not counting on the fact that they're going to open the newspaper, turn on the TV, flip through the magazine, drive past the billboard, walk past your poster. You can catch them when they're at home, scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through Instagram. Their friends are tagging them in stuff that they think is relevant to them. It's a great way to reach people right where they're at. I found an article on Forbes that was titled, "Social Media is no longer a marketing channel, it's a customer experience channel." And that, I think, honestly sums up everything I'm saying today. It's not just a place to throw your product out there with a price tag and expect to get a sale. It's a place to take care of your customers and to really pay attention to what they're saying and what they need, and then adjusting so you can give it to them. So you can connect with your customers by sharing your photos and your stories. You can solve problems and gather opinions to support your brand. And with tools like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, dozens of other options. Maybe you post photos of what you're doing on Instagram. Maybe you have a poll or ask questions on Facebook. Maybe you have resources for other businesses on LinkedIn or search for employees that way. A lot more people are on Snapchat now. And there's honestly so many things you could do. I couldn't tell you what it is that you need to do in this moment. You just need to find what works. So I've been talking a lot about personality, but I cannot move forward without making this absolutely clear. In order to ensure true satisfaction in your business and your relationships, I believe, and this is my opinion, but I believe your personality must be authentic. If you dislike your customers or your business or what you're selling, or feel that your brand requires you to fake it, then I believe you're in the wrong field. I don't think you should pretend to be something you are not. It may work at first, and maybe it'll pay off. Maybe you'll see huge financial gain from it. But I truly believe it's unsustainable and makes you much more susceptible to slipping up and having a marketing nightmare on your hands. So for example, if you have a huge distaste for animals, but somewhere along the line somebody said, hey, you should run a pet shop, you're going to make so much money doing it, it'll be great, just pretend you like animals. And then you open this pet shop and you pretend like you love the animals and everything's great, but then eventually somebody sees you complaining about somebody's cat or something, then they're going to see the true you. Your credibility is going to suffer. Everything crumbles from there. On top of that, it just seems silly to have to fake it. Life is short. I don't see why you should do that. And just a personal example of this, I mentioned that you may know me from previously owning suites, which I loved every minute of, and most of that work that I did was with brides and planning their desserts and their wedding cakes. And what happened was, over the years, the more that I did within the community as a volunteer, my focus changed and it shifted. It was less on in-the-moment events like weddings or even birthdays or that kind of thing, and more on serving the community. And I felt myself not disliking, but pulling back from the wedding industry more and more. And I realized, somewhere down the line, this isn't going to match my personality anymore. So I made the decision to move forward and do something different. So as a side note, I just think it's very important to consider these things if you really want to represent your business well and to succeed and be happy. So all of that aside, we now know what your brand is, why you need it, why it needs to be unique, and why I believe it definitely needs to be authentic. I think we can talk about consistency. I believe this is incredibly important in anything you do. And there's many ways you can stay consistent, and I'm going to talk about a few examples. So first, you can create and use a style guide. So this is just kind of like a guideline that shows you what colors, what fonts, what overall image you're trying to put out there. And I will talk about this more here in a moment. Next, you can use a photo recipe, which is the same principle but for editing your photos. And I also have some examples of this. And then know your elevator pitch. Know what it is that you're doing, what your mission is. If somebody asks you, what do you do, what do you offer, know exactly what you're going to say and be confident in how you're saying it. And make sure your staff know the exact same message. I think messages get so skewed because it comes from different voices. People seem wishy-washy in what they're saying, and then all of a sudden somebody doesn't quite believe that you're as credible as you truly are. And along with this, know the answers to your frequently asked questions. So if there's a service that you don't offer, or there's something that you do offer, or there's something that's very important to you that you feel needs to be known, make sure that you have consistent, clear, concise answers to these questions, that all of your staff know them, that your website has the same language, that your marketing has the same language. Everything is very clear. And then lastly, I made a note of this, mostly because I'm very guilty of this. If you're susceptible to constant rebranding, following graphic trends and experimentation, spend extra time digging deep to find an image you can live with long term. So by this, I mean maybe every 6 months you see a new style of logo that people are doing, and you say, oh man, I really want that. Maybe I'll just change it because it'll be really cool and people will think it's really cool. Or maybe you see a certain color palette that's becoming more popular, so you want to change the colors that you're using. Or maybe you just want to do something unique and different because you're bored. These are things that are fun to do if you enjoy design and if you want to be on top of trends, but it's incredibly detrimental to your brand. If you don't have a consistent image, people aren't going to know who you are. Just like with the Tropicana orange juice, then what else will they be questioning? Is this a different person? Or is their product different? Is their service different? Do I still like them? And maybe your way around this is to find a very simple logo and then have something else that you can change more often, like a blog or something like that, something that isn't as public. I still think it all should be consistent, but if you're absolutely craving that change, then spend some extra time really trying to figure out what it is that you want to do to mess around with. So here are just some examples of what a consistent image looks like. This is some of Laramie Main Street graphics. So the one on the left, the big one, it was an ad in a magazine. And then the ones on the right are graphics from Instagram, Facebook, and the newsletter. So none of these items ever ran together in any one place. They've been all over the place. They've never been next to each other except for on this slide. But because we use a style guide and we know what fonts and colors we're using, they all look like they belong together. They all look like they could be pillows on the same couch. They definitely have the same message visually. So using a style guide, as I mentioned, it serves as a guide for design work. It ensures consistent color and text. So here on the left, you can see the colors with the color codes on the Laramie and Professional Style Guide. That serves as a reference if you're designing something. You can make sure you have the exact same color. And some people may believe that that's a little ridiculous to make sure your colors are that matched. But I really think that the beauty is in the details here, and people will notice if you have a poster and a business card and the blues are a little bit different. I think it's important to be consistent. So you can look and see what style, what weight of font you can use, and really make sure that everything goes together. And lastly, it prevents you from publishing something inconsistent with your image. So maybe you design something and you just aren't quite sure if it looks right. So you can pull up whatever you designed, if it's a graphic or a business card or a poster, and you can set it next to your style guide. And if it looks right, if it looks like it belongs, then that's awesome. If it looks like something just isn't right, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and tweak a few things, tweak the colors of the font, and just try to get it as close as you can. The goal is if somebody is walking down the street and they see a t-shirt, or they see somebody carrying a shopping bag, or they scroll through Facebook and they see an ad, or they open a newspaper and they see an ad, or they see a poster in somebody's window, that they immediately know it's you before they have to get close enough to read it and know exactly what it is. They automatically can say, yeah, that's Laramie and Professionals. Yeah, that's Downtown Laramie. I know who this belongs to. So I said, bonus points, use your style guide to decorate the interior and exterior of your business and your employee uniforms. So that goes along with what I just said. You want to be recognizable. You want it all to go together. And if you can have it that organized and that tight and that clear, that's awesome. I think that's definitely the goal. If you think about like Apple stores, for example, their stores look like their packaging, and their packaging looks like their ads, and their ads look like their product. Everything looks like it belongs together as one consistent unit. So when we talk about images, it's controversial. So I'm admittedly an imagery snob. I'm 100% OCD about visuals, and I will admit that. I am not judging anybody for your choices in what you do for your images, what you post for images. I think no matter what you do, no matter what you post, no matter what I say in this list, if you're consistent in what you do, I think you're making the right choice. So when I talk about images, I'm talking about images overall. So if it's something you're posting on Facebook, or something you're posting on Instagram, or a picture you're using in an ad, I think they all should look the same. But I think it's most important on Instagram, and that's because of the way that Instagram feeds look. So if you comment on somebody's profile on Instagram and then they come back to your profile, they will see your whole grid of pictures. And if it looks messy and like it doesn't really all go together, then maybe they aren't going to be as prone to following you and as drawn to what you're offering, because they just aren't, they just don't find it that appealing. So these are things that I personally avoid across all social media, but especially on Instagram. The first one is memes, which, if you're not familiar, is usually just pictures with funny lines of text on there. And don't get me wrong, I love memes. My husband and I send them to each other all the time. We laugh about them. I see them on Facebook. I don't think that memes are bad, but I just don't think they belong on a business platform unless it's hyper-specific to what you're doing and it fits your audience. Next, photos with watermarks or tags from apps. And with this, I don't mean watermarks from photographers or anything like that, but on some of the reposting apps or the photo editing apps, they have little branded things in the corner usually. The one I'm thinking of is the repost app that has a white rectangle with their logo in it that's in one of the corners. And I find these hugely distracting, and that they take away from the photo that you're trying to share. So I think it's worth it to pay the extra $4 to get the watermark off there. And maybe people would disagree with me on this, but that's just my personal choice. Next is busy photo grids. So when you take multiple photos and put them into one grid. So especially on Instagram, this looks really messy. If you have your Instagram feed and then inside that there's a smaller grid, it's going to be small and hard to see. It can just be kind of messy. There's a lot to look at. You want people to focus on the image itself and not try to pick what thing to look at and possibly miss out on something important. Next is blocks of text. So sometimes you'll see people screenshot like a Word document or something like that to try and get out a bunch of information, which I understand the appeal. It's much easier than trying to retype it, especially if you're doing it on your phone or trying to get it out there quickly. But the thing about images and graphics is that we want to catch people with them. We want people to be scrolling through whatever they're on and to be, for it to stick out to them and it to appeal to them. And I would be hard-pressed to believe that a white sheet with text on it is actually going to appeal to that many people. I don't think they're going to stop in their tracks to read that. So I think it just kind of is worth the extra effort to put the text where the text goes and put a capturing image where the image goes. Next, fill in profiles with photos of only one thing. So I think this is true for anything that you're doing. If you're blogging, if you're posting on Instagram, if you're on Snapchat, if you're on LinkedIn, anything, if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to lose people. An example of this, when I was doing a webinar in the past, is I was looking for an example of a not-so-great Instagram, and I found a burger restaurant in a different country, far, far away from here, and they posted the same shot of a hamburger every time they posted a photo. Their feed was literally hundreds of pictures of hamburgers that didn't seem that different. And ultimately, this is just boring. Maybe there's people who want to just see pictures of one thing over and over again, but I think most people want to see something new and unique. They want to get to know the business. They want to get to know how customers are using products, or shared stories, or something like this. If you went to a profile and you thought, oh, well, they're just posting pictures of hamburgers, I don't really want to follow it because I've seen what they post, and if I follow them, I'm probably just going to see more pictures of hamburgers. So I think this just speaks to the idea that you really need to offer a variety. I firmly believe that a 50-50 split between your own products, your own service, your own whatever you're doing, versus shared content, whether it's from your customers or it's from businesses you work with or somebody in your community, something that makes sense to share. I think 50-50 is a good split to have. And then lastly, extreme photo effects. So by this, I mean something like a harsh black and white or a neon, or something just totally different than what you're posting. I've seen some accounts where they post everything in black and white, or they do kind of like a rose-tinted photo for everything they do. And sometimes it makes sense. I think a lot of times it doesn't. I think usually you just want to pick something that shows off what you're trying to show off and just stay consistent with it. I think usually if somebody saw something like a bright neon photo, and you don't usually post something like that, I think they would probably, first of all, not recognize it as yours, and secondly, wonder why you were doing it. So this is just some examples of some Instagram feeds, which is what I was talking about, wanting the grids to work together. So the one on the left is the Downtown Laramie feed, and it's made up of graphic photos that are taken by a photographer that we use for our marketing materials, and then shared posts. So this is one where using a photo recipe is a little more difficult because I don't want to edit everybody's photos extremely when I share them. But most of these photos are reshared from these businesses. So what I do when I repost them is I put a really, really 5% tiny bit of filter on each photo so that the tone is similar. So if you look at just that grid on the left, that one, they look like they belong together. They don't clash together. They are not all the same thing. There's a whole lot of information happening here. But it's not messy. You can imagine if there was a big block of text or a meme or a big watermark in there, that it would kind of tweak how we look at that. And then the grid on the right is from the Sweets Instagram from about a year ago. And it's the same idea. All those photos are photos we took, but it's a different photo filter. We focus more on having kind of light and airy images, just because of what it was that we were selling and because of our audience. With a lot of wedding professionals, women, bloggers, that kind of thing. So we just wanted to appeal to them, so that's why we chose that recipe. But if you really look at the grid as one whole unit, you can tell that we wanted them all to go together. We wanted them to work together, which I think is important. And when it comes to these photo recipes, maybe you're editing your photos within Instagram. Maybe you're using a photo editing app. There's hundreds of photo editing apps. If you guys have questions about what to use, I can definitely answer that later on, or you can send me an email, whatever. But I think just whatever it is that you do to remain consistent is the idea here. So ultimately, you just need to decide what you want to do and not do, and stick to it. So make these choices standard across all users who post to your account. A lot of times, I see people who have multiple employees who are posting to their account, and you can tell when a different person is posting because the style is different, maybe the quality is different, the angle of the photo is different. Everybody has their thing that they do, and when you have multiple people doing this on one account, it just looks inconsistent. So you definitely want to make it standard across your employees. Maybe you do this by making a checklist that you hang in your store, or maybe you have a process where your photos or the photos they take have to be approved by you or a manager before they go live, or maybe you just assign one person to do all of the photos. Depending on your preference, pick one or a few filters or editing styles for your photos. So maybe you want more than one filter to do. That's fine. I wouldn't do more than 3, and I would make sure that they work together. And then only use these unless you're ready to make a change from that point moving forward. And you can think of it almost as a rebrand. So if you decide, I want to start doing all black and white photos, and you have reason to believe that that's a good idea, then awesome, go for it. But just make sure you're committed to that you're not just throwing out a different photo editing style every 12 pictures or something like that, because I don't think it works the way you want it to. So lastly, I'm just going to wrap things up by talking about staying present across social media. As I said before, there's so many platforms you can be on. Sometimes when you read articles or listen to webinars or talk to people, it feels like you have to be everywhere, and I do not think that's true. I think you need to pick what platforms work for you. You do not have to do everything. So if you don't like Facebook, I don't think you should do Facebook. I don't think you should. But if you like Instagram, I think you should give your Instagram 100%. Really pay attention to your content, pay attention to your followers, give it everything you have. I think having a couple social media accounts is probably a good medium. I usually have about 3, and then put heavy focus on one and a little less on the other 2. But I don't think you should be across everything. A lot of people always ask about Snapchat, which seems to be the new one that everybody's rushing on to. And I think it's a great place to be, but you have to be there. You can't just post once every couple of weeks and expect it to work for you. You have to give it 100%. So next, building a content schedule is a way to make your life easier. So by this, I mean sitting down, looking at a calendar and deciding what kind of content you want to post each day. So maybe you want to post a photo or a video or share an article or talk about one of your products or offer a promotion for one of your products. Decide which days you want to offer what, and then it serves as a guide for you. Because what can happen, especially when you have a lot of accounts, is you feel like, okay, I need to post something today, but I don't know what to post. And then you wait and wait and wait, and you don't have anything to post, so you don't post anything. And then the cycle goes on, and all of a sudden it's been a couple weeks, and you realize, oh, I haven't posted anything, and you get frustrated. So if you make this calendar, then you could say, I don't know what to post, but my calendar says I should post a video today, so then you can go out and look for a video. So in this calendar or schedule, also include a time to respond to comments and reviews, especially the bad ones. So all of this is about the relationship with your customers. So you have to let them know that you're listening. If they take the time to comment on your post or tag you in something or leave a review for you, it's your job to make sure that they're heard and they're taken care of. And sometimes we don't want to respond when it's something bad. It's one of the hardest things I think you have to deal with as a business owner is when people are unhappy with you. Our businesses are our babies, but we have to face these things and take care of them. And a lot of times people appreciate that, even if they are upset with you. So maybe you apologize to a bad review, or maybe if somebody expresses a concern, you post your phone number and your email address and prompt them to get in touch with you to talk about it privately. But don't just ignore it, and certainly don't argue with them, because then that reflects on your business, and that's what people will think of you. And lastly, ask your audience questions and listen to the answers. This seems pretty simple, but I think a lot of people don't do it. You want to know what your audience wants from you. You want to know what your customers are thinking. You want to know if they're liking the product. You want to know if they're happy or if they're upset. If they're upset, you want to know what you can give them. You you can gather all of this information through social media and without paying for a thing. An example of this is years ago when General Motors was struggling, the vice president requested that their employees stop using the term Chevy for Chevrolet, even though it was a term that's affectionately used from loyal customers. So what happened was he wasn't listening, he wasn't paying attention, he totally missed the mark. And that really reflects poorly on a business. And this can happen to a business, whether it's a giant corporation like General Motors, or it's something as simple as not responding to somebody's concern on Facebook for a small business. So just to further wrap it up, these are the things that I think are most important to take from this whole presentation. So your brand is the living, breathing representation of your services. It isn't just a sign on the door. It isn't just a logo. It isn't just a business card or a website or an ad. It's a personality. It has to be taken care of. It has to be nurtured. You have to grow with it and really pay attention to it. And it depends on your authentic personality and values. You have to be real. You can't just be a robot. You can't pretend. You have to offer something unique and valuable, and you have to show your customers that you're doing that. And sometimes that's kind of scary. Sometimes you have to put yourself out there, but it's worth it. That's how you get customers. That's how you get close to your customers. That's how you become successful. And consistency is key in standing out in the marketplace. So no matter if you follow my guidelines for images or you're posting memes every day or whatever you're doing, just if you're consistent in how you're posting it, then that's the key. People will know what to expect from you. If they refer their friends to you for something, then their friends will see that from you as well. You're offering something, you're taking care of people the same way, no matter how you're doing it, and people recognize you, your products, your images, everything, because you're consistent. Know your brand and make sure your staff know your brand. Know what it is that you're doing. Know what your mission is. Don't be wishy-washy. If you're wishy-washy on something in your messaging, it's probably best to just not talk about it. Just wait until you are concrete in your beliefs on it and then talk about it. I think one poor message about something that you're not quite sure about yet could totally ruin everything that you have planned. I think it's worth it to keep it in your pocket and make sure that you have everything together before you move forward. And then lastly, give your chosen social media account their associated followers and your content 100% instead of giving 10 different profiles 50%. So like I said, if you just want to be on Facebook, then be on Facebook, but really be on Facebook. Pay attention to what people are saying. Pay attention to what you're putting out there. Pay attention to when they're interacting, and do the best that you can do. Instead of being on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, and only posting to them once every 3 weeks. I would prefer to see one rock-solid profile for your business, and then everything else just you don't have. So I hope all of that was helpful. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the slide with my contact information. So you can get in touch if you want to. If you have any questions about anything in particular, I would love to talk about you in the future, or if you have questions right now, if we have time, I would like to answer those as well. So if not, then thanks again.